another podcast. Today we are talking to Dr. Julian Coleman. He is the Chair of Committee of Deans and the Assistant Vice-Chancellor at the University of Bolton. And I understand you've just recently left position, which was the Dean of Off-Campus Division. Is that correct?
That's correct, Lyndsey, yeah.
Fantastic. So it's great that you've joined us today. Thank you so much. How are you feeling today?
You're welcome. Yeah, you're absolutely fine. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to talk to you.
I love the picture behind you. That's exactly how I see Bolton. Lovely blue sky. It's brilliant.
Nice and sunny. Yeah, it's
exactly.
Nice.
When will that happen?
That's it. We haven't had much of that this year so far, have we?
No, we haven't, but apparently we've got a heat wave coming, so fingers crossed for the bank holiday.
Fingers crossed, absolutely.
Brilliant. Right, so I want to talk to you today, hopefully about your academic journey, just to find out a little bit about you and your history, how academia has been for yourself, going right back to education. Do you know, I say that, going right back, it makes you sound ancient, and I don't mean it that way. I just mean for some of us, it's quite a long time ago that we're perhaps in high school.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it does feel like a long time ago. But then it did 20 years ago, it felt like a long time ago. So time flies too quickly, I think.
It does. To be honest, this last year feels like a long time ago. I just don't know where I am anymore. So how was education for you? How was high school?
High school was interesting. I was a kind of a late developer, I think, into academia. So, GCSEs or O-levels, in fact, as they were then, but GCSE equivalent, I kind of did a bit of work for and did okay at, but studying wasn't something that grabbed me. And actually A-levels, probably even less so, if I'm absolutely honest. I just about got enough A-levels to go to uni as it was then, but I wouldn't, with my hand on my heart, say it was my top priority at that stage.
Why was that? What was it about sort of the education? Because I know I didn't do A-levels, I did a BTEC. So going from school to college is really different, isn't it? Did you do a sixth form? Yeah,
it was sixth form. And I think that's really interesting because, if I'm honest, it was the practical side of some of what I did at A-level that did grab me a bit more. So I did design technology, which was actually quite a new A-level at the time. But actually that slightly less academic A-level was the one that grabbed me more than anything. And I probably worked harder on that. I mean, you always work hard at the things that grab you, that enjoy you, that you're motivated to do, don't you?
Yeah.
Or at least I do. And that was it, those practical aspects. And I would say generally for me, studying, certain small parts of it, even at that stage, would grab me and it would fire up my imagination, and I'd really want to drill down deeply into those. But then, of course, the lecturer or the teacher had shifted on something else by then.
So have you any thoughts around why maybe your school education didn't grab you?
Different things, I suppose. My dad was quite a studious man. He was a doctor, and I can always remember him saying, "You've got to develop a thirst for knowledge." He said, you really you need to want to learn things. And I get it now. I absolutely get that. But at the time, I was just like, well, I haven't got that thirst. You know, if you're not thirsty, you don't drink, do you?
Yeah.
And I didn't have it. I guess there was a lot going on at the time as well. You know, it's a cliche, but you know, we say, especially these days, we've all got busy lives, and there are always distractions. And at that time, for me, just growing up, being a teenager, not being quite sure of where I was in life, maybe not quite having that confidence to sit down and study wasn't something that I thought that's my top priority. It was maybe it's something to do with the motivation, how I was being motivated by the school. Lots going on in family life, I guess. A lot of distractions.
Yeah. It's difficult, isn't it, the education system, because it is very prescribed. I know I didn't really enjoy high school because I didn't really enjoy any of the subjects. I enjoyed elements of it, but you're right. I think I started to gain my interest after school, and I was grabbed by various different kind of college and beyond education. I wonder what we can do moving forward. I keep thinking about it for my son. He's 13 and he's in high school, and I think he's very similar. He's just not interested. And it's finding that area where they have that interest and they want to have that first. They want to go for it.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, and I think I mean, part of it is just thinking, well, actually, people develop at different ages and different rates. And as long as they've got instilled in them that actually you'll get a lot out of life if you learn how to do things, learn how to think about complex problems, you know, able to help people with difficult situations or design, you know, complex buildings or structures and deal with that complexity. I think as long as you instill that into people, you might actually get the knowledge or the qualifications, maybe at different stages as well. Yeah.
So we found you doing your A levels and you was really interested with one area in particular. So what did you think about moving on to university? When did that sort of first thought pop into your head?
Okay, yeah, no, it's a funny one, because I guess still to an extent these days it's the same, but certainly in those days you didn't have to think about taking out a student loan. Your fees were paid for you.
Tell me about those days. I
know. Sorry to make everybody jealous. And it's a huge privilege, and I think we should really think of it as that in a way. But we didn't have that, and it was almost expected. You know, you went to sixth form. It was expected by my parents, and it was expected by the school, kind of thing. So I think I always had it in mind that I would go to university. I actually had to take a year out because particularly maths and physics, which were my other two A levels, I didn't get anywhere near enough grades to go to university, certainly not the ones that I wanted to go to. And so I took a year out to retake A levels and did get, I think that year out was quite good in some ways, because it was a bit of a shock that, actually, you know, surprise, surprise, you've not put much work into your A levels, therefore you didn't get the results. And it was a bit of a wake-up call, and I did work a little bit harder during that retake year. Still lots of other distractions, and I wouldn't say even at that stage studying and education had really grabbed me, but I did do better, and I did get enough grades to go to university.
Was it more about the expectations of others then at that stage, where you felt it was kind of what you did rather than what you wanted?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to sum it up. Yeah, I think you almost were encouraged not to think too hard about what you as an individual wanted. It was, well, you know, that's what you do, kind of thing. So I think, you know, if I think now to my son, who's my youngest son is 21, and he's very much thinking long and hard about what he wants to do and what's best for him. And so he's decided not to go to university at the moment. He might go eventually, but yeah, I think it's actually quite a good thing to really think long and hard about what you want and what's best for you.
It's interesting you make that point, because I think if I had gone to university at the right age, at 18, I think I would be very much like yourself, where I perhaps wouldn't have put everything into it. But then going back as a mature, I hate the word mature student, older student, at 38, my interest was there, and I just couldn't learn enough. And I think about that with my son now, especially when you add into it the consequence of fees. So, you know, do you realistically want to be going at 18, 19 if you're not sure and racking up all that debt?
Yeah, I agree. And I think especially for universities like ours, where we're really geared towards developing people into graduate level jobs, you know, it's okay. Yeah, it's a fantastic experience to go to university, and you do a lot of growing up. And you can still do that, you know, whatever age you are when you come to university. I've got a fantastic colleague who's both her mum and her dad decided once they were retired that they really wanted to do a degree programme. And they're both actually alumni of the University of Bolton, which I just think is a wonderful story. So you always learn at all sorts of different ages. But sorry, I'm waffling now. Coming back to the point that the question that you're asking, I agree. I think we're the sort of university where, because we're targeted towards particular careers, it does lend itself really well to that kind of, I've had a few years now thinking about what I want to do, and I've got a reasonable idea now that this is sort of career, at least the career area that you want to be in, if not the exact career. You know, some of our programs like nursing, obviously you know exactly what you want to do and that's what you're there to study, but others you've got a general idea that you want to be in the caring professions or the engineering type profession or computing or whatever it is, and you've got that bit of maturity to say, right, I'm paying my loan, I'm going to go for this, and then I'm going to get a decent job at the end of it.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Certainly my experience has been that with Bolton. When I came to do my degree, it was threaded through the degree throughout, was what your opportunities are and what happens next. I don't know if that happens at most universities or whether it's because we do have a larger proportion of mature students. But yeah, I definitely think that's certainly a core element of Bolton, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the more that we can work with, as staff members, work with employers, but also work with students to get that integration, the better it is. Yeah. As you say, it's a real core at Bolton. I think, to be fair, government are driving universities generally in that direction. So they want value for money, because although it's a loan, it's still considered a little bit of public expenditure because it's a very low cost loan. Some of it's not paid back, as we know, until people hit a threshold. So they do want programs that are going to deliver graduates who can kind of contribute in different ways when once they've graduated.
Yeah, that makes sense. Although I still don't know what I'm going to be when I grow up.
Well, that's it. Some of us never grow up, of course, Lyndsey. I don't think I've still not quite grown up.
Oh, long may that continue. So, how did you choose your university course? What did you choose and how was it for you?
Well, that ties back into what we were talking about earlier. So some of the distractions that were taking me away from my studies when I was doing my A-levels were sport. So actually, one of the key things, I really wanted to go to Loughborough because they had a great reputation for sport. People like Sebastian Coe went there, and, it was at the time where the Olympics and Seb Coe and Steve Ovett were real role models. So, yeah, I wanted to go to Loughborough. I didn't get the right grades for that. So I ended up going to my second choice, which I'm really pleased that I went to, which was Cardiff. And I did civil engineering there. And I loved the time that I spent there. It was one of those experiences where you meet a new group of friends and you suddenly think, actually, there's a lot I can do. Social life was good, etc. The subject was interesting, but we can come on to that maybe in a bit. But yeah, it was that whole moving away from home, finding a circle of friends, the opportunity to do some new hobbies, through the student union, was quite a big part of my university experience, certainly in my first degree.
Was it? What new things did you pick up?
So I really liked the sport and the running, but when I went to university, it was the opportunity to get into kind of hill walking, climbing, mountaineering, that kind of thing. So that really grabbed me, to the extent that virtually every weekend we'd be away with the mountaineering club and stuff like that. So it's really great that there are clubs and societies at the university in Bolton for people to get involved with.
Yeah. I don't think I took enough advantage of the SU facilities, to be honest. I don't know whether that's because I came back a little bit older.
Yeah. But yeah, it could be, couldn't it? Yeah, and you've got more going on in your life by that stage outside of uni, maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
I did join the netball team though. Flipping.
Oh, that's good.
Crikey, it was a great idea, but 20 years older than most of the girls, I couldn't walk after some of the sessions.
Excellent. I'm sure they would have learned a lot from you as well, Lyndsey.
How did you find studying then? Reflecting back on how it was at GCSE level and A level, how was studying for your first degree?
Okay, so again, with my first degree, with my hand on my heart, I would say I was certainly not the best student ever. It was that whole distraction thing coming through again. It was
I'm picking up on a theme here.
You're picking up on a theme here. At some stage it will flip, I promise. But yeah, it was these new hobbies, the being away from home, the new circle of friends and things like that. And the subject kind of bits of it again grabbed me. and it did, and I really liked some parts of civil engineering.
What was it that made you choose civil engineering?
It was, I mean, I liked the kind of construction design aspect of life. I kind of thought maybe architecture I was thinking I wanted to do, but you have to get really good at art and get really great art grades, which A-level art didn't grab me so much, but you really need that for architecture. So I kind of, civil engineering, to be honest, Lyndsey, I think I'm not quite sure what made me choose it. At some stage, I guess a careers teacher maybe said, oh, well, with your A-levels, you know, something in engineering will be good. I think my mum and dad were okay with it, something like civil engineering. But again, I don't think it was that personal choice of really sitting and having that chance to talk it through with somebody, to really understand who you were as a person and what sort of subject would be really good for you, or what you'd be able to contribute well to. I'm kind of glad I did it, because I think engineering is a good broad education. It makes you think in a kind of systematic way. It gets you into those processes and so on. So yeah, it was funny because I didn't actually go into civil engineering.
No.
So I did a year out. The degree program had it had 2 6-month periods out. So it was a 4-year degree. And at the end of your second year, kind of around April time, you went off and you worked right the way through the summer. Okay. And then you came back for your third year. And in your third year, you did the same. You did your study from September through to about April time. And then you went out and did another summer in industry, 2 different companies and 2 different sides of civil engineering. And then after that, you came back for your full final year. You did your final exams and so on. And I think during that time, I mean, I kind of did enough to pass the degree again. I didn't get a great degree in terms of my first degree, but I did enough to get through. And I think by the end of the 2 6-month periods in industry, I'd kind of made up my mind. I'm not really sure that this is the right career for me. And so I think, you know, looking back in terms of advising and working with people making those choices now, well, the first thing is, I think, don't beat yourself up if that's what happens to you, because what happens to you is right for you. But on the other hand, I think, and it ties into what you were saying, Lyndsey, about, you know, if you come to university after a year or 2 out and you've had chance to reflect and maybe get some work experience and some life experience generally, you're probably going to be more likely to pick something that you stick with. So yeah, I think, you know, don't worry if it doesn't work out, that you go exactly down your career line, because any university degree, I'm a big believer that it teaches you how to think and how to problem solve and how to work with people, and that equips you well for virtually any graduate job. Obviously, you know, if it ties in with you're picking up knowledge that's really directly going to help you with your career, then it's even better, obviously.
You know, I think you're absolutely right. It's so interesting. I didn't go to university. I joined the police. So I was a police officer for 16 years. And just listening to what you were saying then about what a university degree gives you, sort of the critical thinking and problem solving, you'd think throughout my service within the police I perhaps would have learnt that. And I always thought I did. But actually coming to Bolton and doing my psychology degree, it's really taught me how to think critically and how to problem solve in a way that I never had before. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I really do think a degree gives you something extra. It really does. And I was probably really naive and a little bit hesitant throughout my 20s, thinking, oh, I'm a cop, I know all this, I don't need a degree. What's a graduate mean? Well, actually, it means quite a lot. It does give you so much knowledge and just things that you can't explain it, I guess, just information and ability that you never have in
I agree, because that's it. I think for me what happens is, certainly as you go through the later years in your degree, you're not told for your assessment work or your assignments course or whatever it is, you don't get a step-by-step instruction what to do. You have to think that out for yourself. And for me, that's like a lot of things that hit you in life, in your working life. Your manager or your supervisor is not going to tell you, at 9 o'clock you've got to do this, at 9:10 you've got to do the other. They're going to come to you with a relatively complex problem that you've got to think out how to solve it yourself. And
and then also, oh gosh, if that isn't working, what else can I do?
Yeah.
This is what it's made me reflect. When I was in the police and you're faced with a situation, well, I know what it is. I know that person's done something and that's the path I'm taking, without having that critical thinking of thinking, what if I'm wrong? What if it's actually something else?
What if there's a better way of doing it? Exactly. We've always done it this way, but what if there's a better way?
Yes.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So that was your first degree.
Yeah.
What's happened then? You keep talking about first degree. There's obviously
So what happened was a professor from an allied department, it was a kind of manufacturing systems department, came along at the end of our towards the end of our final year to give a presentation on a master's course. And it was a master's course called Systems Engineering. And it was all about how you could model the way that factories or any type of system really, how it would work and how you could improve things by being very analytical about mapping out the processes, how they work now, how they could work in the future. And what he said was, it's a newish area, which it was at the time. And he said, but some of our graduates have gone on to work for company X, Y, and Z. And they've made a big difference. And I think we had a presentation from one recent graduate from the master's program. And it really fired my imagination. And he said, people with a civil engineering background often kind of work well in this sort of systems engineering sort of environment. And I was kind of brave enough because I was, I was a shy sort of 20-year-old or whatever it was, 21-year-old. But I was brave enough to go and ask him afterwards to tell me a bit more about it. And that person went, and that's what fired me up to do the master's program, really. And in fact, that professor went on to supervise my dissertation and so on. And we had nowadays they're called KTPs, knowledge transfer projects, which is where the university links up with a company and do a sort of a joint project. So we had one of those, which I went on to do again with this particular professor. And that was what, I guess it was that somebody taking the time out to actually appreciate what you're good at, that flipped me over to think, actually, it's learning in depth about things was something that was really rewarding.
And that was the difference for you. That's what's changed it all around. Yeah,
basically. Yeah, it was finding the subject, but potentially also a bit of a role model or somebody that was that valued. You know what it's like, don't you? You always work well for people that really value the work that you're doing, and I think there was that sort of thing that came through there.
Yeah, absolutely. I would not be sitting here on a PhD path if Dr. Jackie Harrison hadn't taken that time out with me.
Exactly.
She's that person for me. I remember when she first suggested something like that, and I looked at her, like, who are you talking to? Is it me?
Yeah, me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
So then, where was that continued at? Cardiff?
So that was still at Cardiff, the same place that I did my first degree. I stayed on there and did the masters, which went well. I really enjoyed it, and got well into the dissertation. The dissertation particularly fired me up because that was working in a company, really using the knowledge that we'd learned in the masters course.
What was your thesis title?
Sorry, Lynn, say again.
What was your thesis title for your masters?
Okay, it was something like, I probably can't remember this exactly, but I think it was something about reducing the lead time on lead time reduction by system simplification, I think is what it was. Wow. And it was all about trying to simplify things to get products through the factory faster than than they were previously.
I like simple.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So where does that take you to? What comes next in your career?
So after that was some time working in manufacturing industry. First of all, a project linked to the university, but working in a company that made all sorts of heating and ventilation equipment and air conditioning units and stuff like that. That was still down in South Wales. So that was a couple of years. And then I had a couple of years working in manufacturing for automotive component suppliers based in the Midlands, supplying into some of the Midlands kind of vehicle manufacturers like Jaguar, Land Rover, Rover Group as it was then. I really enjoyed and learned. You learn so much, don't you, in your first few years in a job that you're doing. And then an opportunity came up to get into academia at University of Warwick, something called the Warwick Manufacturing Group. And what they did, a bit like Bolton in a way, they've got very close ties with industry. And so they had a manufacturing group that most of their work was either collaborative research or it was like training programs. They were actually master's programs, but for specific companies. So they're very close to industry. And it felt like a halfway house for me between working in industry and working in a university in a way.
Yeah. Put in both camps.
Yeah, exactly.
How did you find it?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, so you got put on, one couple of months. You might have the first project I did was down at Heathrow Airport with the British Airways engineering, where they repaired all the planes and everything. So, and then another project was with Rover Group at their assembly plant in Birmingham at Longbridge. So it really varied and picking up lots of interesting stuff about projects and working with different people as well.
How did you end up with your PhD?
So that was, again, whilst working at Warwick. After about 3 years working there, they said, we like our academics to have a PhD. So I registered part-time and I undertook that. In fact, I didn't finish it whilst I was at Warwick. I started and did about 3 years there and then moved to Bolton and finished my PhD whilst I was at the Bolton Institute as it was then. Wow. So, yeah.
How did you find doing a PhD?
Yeah, tough. You do. I mean, you'll know this through and through. You've got your supervisor, which is brilliant, but it's down to you. It's you've got to be highly motivated, haven't you? Yeah. It's not like you've got every week you go to a lecture and then you set a piece of assessment work and you're not guided through it in that way. You'll know this anyway. It's very self-guided.
That's what I'm really missing right now, to be honest, is that structure, is that, knowing in a month's time I have to submit a piece of work, and I know you can agree that with your supervisor, you can agree your own timetable, but it's not it's not standard, is it?
The urgency isn't there. It's not like, well, you're not going to pass your PhD unless you do that, like you are with a degree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Is it something you thought you would do, a PhD, or was it because it was a suggestion?
No, I don't. It was a suggestion. I guess after a year or two working at Warwick, I kind of wanted to do one. It's funny actually, because coming full circle, my dad, who was a doctor, was quite research minded. So although to be a doctor you don't need a research degree, but he actually he wanted to go into research, so he did a doctorate, an MD, and would have probably gone into research. He ended up being a general practitioner, but certain things happened that meant he couldn't follow his research career. But so that there was a little bit of that. My dad got a doctorate, so funny things like that can influence you and come together to say, yeah, maybe that's right for me.
Yeah. What was your doctorate research area?
So I was really lucky actually, because my work was working with a number of automotive suppliers, doing a research project, and actually my PhD was along the same lines. So I mean, I think sometimes you need that, especially when you're doing it part-time, if you can base it on work that you're doing as part of your day job. It's really, really helpful, and I was lucky in that regard. So it was a European funded project for 5 vehicle manufacturers. So BMW were in it, Mercedes, Renault, Citroën, Rover as it was then, and Ford. And they wanted to essentially compare different ways that they worked with their suppliers. So it was like a comparative study amongst these 5 vehicle manufacturers. So it was interesting research, but it lent itself to writing it up as a PhD. And it took me about 2 or 3 years to realise I could be making much more of what I was doing with my day job in my PhD.
Really?
And yeah, about 2 or 3 years in, my supervisor said, well, you just done a big report for the research project. You know, that could be a couple of chapters. No, it's, you know, that's a big chunk of your PhD. And he was absolutely right.
Yeah. You mean like the crossover? Were you separating it in your mind, the sort of academic side of it to the work side, and not realising that they kind of work together?
Yeah, I think so. And possibly just changed focus a tiny bit from a PhD, so that to bring it more in line with what I was doing for the research project.
Yeah. Sometimes I think as well, and I mean, I did, when I first heard about a PhD, I mean, we all kind of know what they are, but I didn't know what it was until I applied, really. I think you can overcomplicate it, and I think I know what you mean. You think, I don't know, you have to do something special with bells and whistles and make it really fancy and jazzy, and the reality is you don't.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree.
It's a key piece of knowledge, isn't it?
It is. But I think you're absolutely right, Lyndsey, and sometimes you hold it on a pedestal. You know that we've got to solve the world's problems with this PhD, and you can never do that. You can find something out that's really, really useful that wasn't known before, but actually that's what you need to do for a PhD. You're not looking to crack the world's problems in that particular area.
It's keeping your focus as well, isn't it, in your interest?
Yeah.
I know that's something that other people I've spoken to have said, that it's really important. I think that your PhD area is something that you are very invested in and very interested in. And I know I'm certainly finding that if I didn't care about what I'm researching,
there's no point. I agree.
I would really struggle to write. And I guess if you're working in that area, you're already producing a lot of what is required for that thesis.
Yeah, I agree. I think that word investment that you used is really important, and the more invested you are in it, the easier it is. It flows more naturally. And also, I always say to people, don't be too worried if a year or even 2 years in, you need to change tack a little bit, because actually that's natural. You know, you find something out about the area you're researching in, and it sometimes makes you realise, well, actually, something slightly different would be a better direction to go in. And you wouldn't know that unless you'd really drilled down into that original area. So I always say to people, you know, almost have it in mind what your title and what your topic area is going to be, but don't come to that final title until later on in the process.
Yeah, I'm already finding that with what my thought process was, and I'm already sort of deviating slightly. And I think it goes back to what we said earlier, doesn't it? About having the ability to think, are we doing it right, or can we change? Does it need changing? It's that growth mindset, isn't it? Yeah,
definitely, and it can evolve.
And it should evolve. It really should.
Yeah.
It can't just be a straight line. It just wiggles, doesn't it, everywhere?
It does, and that's what makes it so fascinating, but also potentially more difficult to write up. That's the funny thing about a PhD, is that, you know, you can be doing all this really fascinating research, and actually getting it down on paper in terms of a thesis is probably the hardest thing. And sometimes you think, well, you need to do it because that's the way that other people get, and that's the way you pass on that knowledge. But especially for some PhDs, I often end up thinking, couldn't you just actually, I don't know, do a film or a recording about your findings and have that as the bit that you keep for posterity? But maybe sometime in the future we'll do that.
Hating that idea immediately. That could be the future with all this online learning.
Yeah. You never know.
How did you find writing up your thesis? Was that something you did along the way, or was it like a last-minute saloon?
So bits of it I did along the way, and bits were very much last chance saloon. I was really lucky. The university now, Bolton, was it still BIHE in those days? No, I think we just got our university title. I was given like a day a week to write up or essentially to finish off my PhD. It was a bit of, unless you finish it this year, you're not getting that time next year. So it was, exactly. Just like we all say about, and we all find from time to time, it was that pressure of time that, it's like, you're not going to get this remission off your timetable next year. And that helped, actually.
Yeah, I bet it does. I think it's that pressure that you need, and that's what we were talking about, wasn't it? That's the pressure I'm missing. I do feel like I'm missing something at the minute. I'm missing. I'm not sure what that is. I don't know whether it's just having that deadline, that pressure.
You need that immediate deadline kind of thing, almost.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how long have you got to go, Lyndsey, if you don't mind me asking?
I already started in September. So,
okay. So that deadline, which could be 3 years or more away, it just feels like forever, I guess.
Yeah, it does. And I think I've still got my undergraduate head on in a lot of ways. I'm kind of looking at it from a dissertation point of view. Each of my studies, I'm just trying to write up as I say each of my studies, I'm only on study one, but in my head it's write it up like a dissertation and then just keep it to one side until the end. And then I think that's
a good way to think about it. And the other, I think, reassuring thing I say to a lot of PhD students is, again, don't beat yourself up, because actually, even if you go for a few weeks and you've not managed to write much, or you're still thinking through the PhDs, if they're worth their salt, there's a lot of deep thought and understanding and getting concepts straight in your mind. And actually, sometimes that happens in a month where you feel like you've not really done much or put much down on paper, but suddenly something will click and you'll think, oh well, maybe all that time that you spent, I used to when I was given this day off a week, you'd sit there and you think, right, I've got to write something, and then you think, you get distracted to the world's stupidest things, like doing some vacuum cleaning or something like that, because it's easier than sitting there. But actually, all that time you're thinking it through, and reflecting on things. So,
what advice would you give to yourself if you could, looking back?
I think I would say be a bit more disciplined and try and set yourself those mini targets and get them. Put the pressure on yourself, and put. I wish I'd done that to a greater extent, really, because I was lucky. I was given that time towards the end, but if it had been if it had been during COVID year, there's no way I would have been given that time. So for the PhD, bit more disciplined, and perhaps the other thing to use as deadlines are, and maybe comes in year 2 or 3, to get some conference papers or even a journal paper abstract written, because that it's disciplines your mind, because there's usually set submission points, but also you get such a great boost if you get something, when you get something accepted for a conference, and also it really focuses your mind, because you've got to be up there on that stage giving that presentation of your paper. I didn't do so much of that, but I think that's good.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. That's a really good way to make sure that you've written something, get it ready. I put my recent submission to a journal article. It was from my dissertation from my undergraduate. oh gosh, it was like taking a bullet when I got those reviewers' comments. It's hard, isn't it? It's really hard.
It is, but you know, you got to, if you can treat them positively. But it is. It's like they always say, it's not how hard you fall down, it's how quickly you can pick yourself back up, and it's hard, isn't it?
It's really hard. I think that's something that I certainly didn't expect, how different it is trying to write a journal article and sort of the hoops you have to jump through. I think that's something that I really wasn't expecting, but it's been a great experience. I'll carry on learning.
Good. Yeah. And I suppose you can think of it positively, that at least that reviewer has spent that time. They wouldn't have bothered looking at it unless they thought there was potential in it.
Yeah, of course. So where do we find you now then after your PhD? What's happened since? So
I got my PhD in about 2001, and I actually got attracted over to the University of Liverpool for a 2-year postdoc at the management school there. On an automotive supply chain type research project, and I worked with Jaguar over at Halewood, as it was then.
Did you give out freebies?
Unfortunately not, no brand new Land Rovers or Jaguars, sadly. But no, that was a great project and a really good experience again. But it kind of made me think that teaching in the business school, supply chain management in that topic area was what I really wanted to do. There weren't many opportunities to carry that on at the University of Liverpool, whereas back in Bolton, there were jobs in the business school. So I loved working in Bolton, and so that's why I came back to become first of all a senior lecturer in supply chain management in what is now the IOM, I guess, the Institute of Management.
Bolton drew you back in.
It drew me back in. Yeah.
What is it about Bolton that you love?
Well, people always say it, that there's something magical about it, and you'll know yourself. There's a lot of people who started as students and carried on working and so on. I love the people. I love the kind of size of the institution that we are. We're not a huge one, like one of these big national universities, but we're big enough to be able to do good things and attract good people and good students. But we're not so big that you get lost as in that mass of you're a name, not a number kind of thing. And the people make it for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I really do. And that's another of the themes that I've found when I've been talking to different academics is you really do feel this love for Bolton. It's you didn't really know where Bolton was, and now my entire life's at Bolton. It's
Absolutely.
A very unique university, and I think you said before, one of the things you said, that you were shy and you were brave going to speak to that professor when you were thinking about your masters. And I'm hoping, firstly, I think you don't necessarily have that at Bolton, because I think you are far more accessible and you do feel like you can go and speak to academics. But this is why I wanted to do these, because I feel it just gives you that extra access. I'm not convinced many red bricks will happily sit there and do podcasts like this. And I just think that shows the difference between the academics at the University of Bolton in comparison. We do want our sort of students to come and talk to us and to help them and to talk to them.
I think you're right, Lyndsey. I think, in certain institutions, you get they tend to attract a certain type of person. I think, obviously everybody's different. Everybody's an individual at the end of the day. But generally, people come and work at the university because they're really keen on education. But they're, you kind of attract people that are of a like mind. And I think with the academic colleagues that I've got, we're all about wanting to pass on that education and make sure that people are really well prepared to go into those jobs. And so to do that, you need to be approachable, you need to talk to people, because that's what as a student you need to be good at when you go into those jobs, is talking to people, finding out how to solve problems, working in a team. And if we're not like that as academic versus student sort of relationship, how do we expect students to work like that in industry? So
where do you think the future is going to take you?
That's $6 million question. I'm not sure. I'm really enjoying doing the job that I'm doing at the moment, working with the faculty deans and the heads of school and academic colleagues, and finding, again, coming back to what we said before, finding out, well, are there different ways we can do things, better ways, listening to what students are telling us about how we could do things better, and that for me is fascinating, and for me at the moment it's enough of a challenge for me.
It does sound like it's enough of a challenge. Well, it's been really interesting talking to you. Thank you so much. Have you got anything else you think we can talk about?
No, I think that's been. Thank you. It's a pleasure and a privilege, and thanks for your questions. But I mean, any students listening, well, A, good luck with your studies. B, if there's anything that you think we can do differently or better, just feel free. There's all sorts of mechanisms, as everybody knows, to pass on feedback. But ultimately, drop me an email as well, or any of the other senior managers. We're just keen to make the university the best for our students, for our local employers, and for the kind of health service and all those other areas of employment that we service, and for Bolton generally, really. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you.